Part 5. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 41. Nan Jiao is arrogant and domineering, but she is brainless. Nan cleaned her hands under the service of the maid and said in a calm tone, "Aunt Li looks a little smart, but in fact she is just trying to gain favor in front of your father with her beauty. Just let your father put pressure on me. I used to be too lazy to pay attention to them, but over time, they really thought that I was a soft-tempered person who was easy to bully. It would be too disrespectful to say that Nan Jiao and her mother had any deep plans. Take this mother and daughter." Nan 11 nodded. "Mom is right, the one who really deserves to be taken to heart is Ms. Lu. Among the women in Gulan courtyard who make a living by selling their looks, which one is not superb?" It was said that Ms. Lu was an warren of a certain brothel in the past. Her beauty was naturally first-rate. In addition to her appearance, she was also said to have an extraordinarily gentle temperament. She was like a considerate and interpretive flower. She was proficient in all kinds of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. So it is easy to capture a man's heart. Even her father, a high-ranking father, could not escape Liu's charm. He redeemed his body for her 16 years ago, 16 years ago? Nan 11 frowned slightly. "Mom, the relationship between my father and Lu lasted for 16 years. Nan glanced at her and slowly shook her head. "It didn't last for 16 years and was interrupted in between. I was completely kept in the dark about this matter at the beginning, and I didn't know the existence of the Lu family at all. When I was pregnant, your father started to bring concubines into the house. At first, he felt a little guilty when facing me. But I was young and came from a business family. I seemed to be out of place among the rich and powerful families in the imperial capital. Same. Thinking that my status may have indeed humiliated him, I felt a little guilty. In addition, many official wives deliberately showed favor to me and emphasized in disguised form in front of me that men should have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Over time, it seems that this statement has been accepted. But I didn't expect that your father would become more aggressive and take in one concubine after another. Although I could bear it, I became more and more disappointed with him. It's not a big mistake for a man to be lustful. Men in the world are like this, but I can understand how many emotions I have." At this point, sarcasm appeared on her lips. Perhaps after becoming famous, he no longer cares about the help from his wife. He needs to quickly take root in the imperial capital, establish good relations with the dignitaries of the imperial capital, and obtain benefits through marriage. In short, I got used to it year by year. When habits become natural, what else can't be accepted? After giving birth to her daughter, her feelings for her husband changed from deep love to disappointment, then from disappointment to numbness, and then she has remained numb until now. Nan asked the maid beside her to prepare lunch, and then sat down opposite Nan 11 with a teacup. "Your father had a relationship with the Lu family back then, but she is a woman from the land of hooks, and your father is a person who values reputation." When Nan 11 heard this, she knew there was something hidden. Then why is there Nan Yu? 16 years ago, Ms. Lu was a popular courtesan in a brothel and a cash cow in the Gulan courtyard. How could the madam allow her to become pregnant? Later, your father and Ms. Lu also broke up for a few years. When you were about 7 years old, I found out that Ms. Lu secretly gave birth to a girl after spending a night with your father. Then does my father know? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 42. Nan shook her head. He doesn't know. At that time, the competition among officials in the court was fierce. Your father didn't dare to step into the brothel too blatantly. He was cautious like a thief when he occasionally went there, for fear of being caught. Nan 11 frowned. How did mother know that Lu had a child? My guard told me. Guards around him? Nan 11 was a little confused, but didn't ask any more questions. Mrs. Nan continued, it was not until 3 years ago when your father became the Prime Minister that Lu sent someone to tell your father the news. After many years, the courtesan of that year is still charming and charming. As soon as they met, they attracted your father's soul. The two of them were attracted to each other and soon became passionate again. Nan 11 said calmly, when my father met Lu, he was not the Prime Minister. For his own career and reputation, he would not really get entangled with Lu. But Lu was pregnant but kept it a secret from everyone and gave birth to the child alone. She waited until my father became the Prime Minister. I have to say that her ability to endure is really admirable. Madame Nan nodded, yes, although I look down on her, I have to admire her patience and scheming for enduring for many years. But how can Lu be sure that my father will definitely become the Prime Minister? Nan 11 was puzzled. If my father is still the same rank as before, or if my father commits a crime in the past few years and is demoted by the emperor, or even exiled, does she plan to raise her daughter alone? A prostitute, men flocked to her when she was young, for her appearance and body, but the identity of a prostitute has never represented any glory. Which man is willing to marry her? The daughter of a prostitute is also shameful. Which serious son of a noble family would marry the daughter of a prostitute? It is impossible that Lu did not have any plan. Maybe she has predicted that your father will be able to rise to prominence, Madame Nan said, just like when I unconditionally supported him to study and take the imperial examination. Wasn't it also because I believed in his talent and ability? Lu came from a brothel and has seen all kinds of men. She may have seen at a glance that your father will become a great man in the future. It sounds like it makes sense. 11 Madame Nan raised her eyes and looked at her in confusion. Why are you so interested in the matter between your father and Lu today? Because Lu has to be guarded against, Nan 11 said. Nan Yu has been thinking about entering the Prime Minister's mansion to recognize her ancestors, and there may not be no Liu's instigation behind her. Madame Nan said calmly, your father used to care about his reputation, and there were people outside who were also hiding. Now he is finally fearless, but it's also true that things are different now. He is now the Prime Minister with unlimited glory, and he is deeply trusted and respected by the new emperor. What else is there to worry about? Fame, wealth, sex, and wine. Nan Xingzi has been in the officialdom for so many years, and has already reached a height that most men in the world cannot reach in their entire lives. Naturally, he has to let go of all the previous constraints and scruples, and indulge himself in the glory, so that he will not waste 10 years of hard study and many years of hard work in the officialdom. My father can't resist Liu's beauty and charm, and there is also a daughter, Nanyu, between them. He can't get rid of her even if he wants to. Nan 11 leaned on the brocade couch in front of the carved window and smiled faintly, but I can't tolerate Nanyu. Mrs. Nan looked at her thoughtfully. Did Lu look for you? Nan 11 shook her head. Why does mother look at you? It seems that your hostility towards Nanyu is deeper than Nanjiao. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 43. Nan Jiao just came here to ask for humiliation. I just let her learn a lesson, Nan 11 said calmly. Nan Yu is determined to fight to the death. Till death? Mrs. Nan was secretly frightened and couldn't help but guess what happened to Nan 11. Why do you suddenly harbor such strong hatred for Nanyu? Frankly speaking, a daughter from an outside wife is not as big of a threat as Nan Xiao. As long as Mrs. Nan disagrees and controls the finances of the house, Nan Xingzi will have to weigh it. To take a step back, even if Mrs. Lu could enter the palace, her status would destine her to be a concubine for the rest of her life, and she would never be able to become a wife. But Aunt Li and Nan Jiao are now legitimate concubines. According to Nan Xingzi's love for Aunt Li, he may have already planned to abolish his wife and straighten Aunt Li. The Li family is from a noble family. Mrs. Lu, who came out of nowhere because of her identity, didn't know how many streets there were. How could Nan 11 abandon the Li family and her daughter and directly inflict hostility on the Lu family and Nan Yu? What's the secret behind this? After Nan 11 came back from the regent's palace, she was obviously different from before. She broke off her engagement, turned against Gu Qingshu, and became an undying enemy with Nan Yu. What happened during the more than a month at the Prince Regent's palace? At noon, mother and daughter had lunch together at Tingyulu. Aunt Li and Nan Jiao did not come to make trouble again. Mrs. Nan enjoyed a rare quiet meal with her daughter, and many of Nan 11's favorite dishes were prepared. A table full of delicacies was laid out. After lunch, Nan 11 returned to her own Jinlan garden with the trophies she and her mother bought from shopping. Yunyu and Yin's Huang followed closely. As soon as I walked through the wisteria-draped corridor, a cold and angry voice sounded in my ears, "Aman, this is the yard you clean? Why are there still fallen leaves here? Do you know that the eldest lady has come back? It's you with such a sneaky attitude, the eldest lady will not be the first to spare you when she comes back." The reprimanded maid looked pale and lowered her head and said, "Sister Ajin, I just cleaned it up." Snap! Ajin got angry, raised his hand and slapped her in the face. "Are you still making excuses? You are very courageous." 5 fingerprints immediately appeared on Aman's face, but she did not dare to say anything. Tears welled up in her eyes. She apologized in a low voice and turned around to pick up the leaves. "What are you doing?" Ajin said coldly. "Did I let you go?" Aman stood up, his side face as pale as paper. "I look at your aggrieved look, as if you have been abused." "Did I abuse you? Who are you crying for?" "There are no rules at all," Ajin said fiercely. "Wipe your tears clean. Go to work quickly." Nan 11 passed through the corridor slowly and quickly, and soon walked into the courtyard. In the spring season, the weeping willows on both sides of the courtyard were blowing in the wind, bringing a sense of spring to the whole courtyard. A man, who was petite and slender, squatted down and picked up the sycamore leaves that should not have appeared in the willow courtyard with his hands. "The big girl is back," Yunyu said loudly. "Why don't you come out to greet the girl quickly?" As soon as the words fell, Ajin and Aman in the courtyard turned their heads. A smile instantly appeared on Ajin's face, and he walked over respectfully and saluted, "Miss is back." Aman didn't dare to say anything, and just stood silently behind Ajin, with his head lowered, trying to reduce his presence as much as possible. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 44. 2 more slender maids came out of the room and greeted them with light steps. "Miss, are you back?" Nan 11 nodded, passed Ajin, walked to stand next to a man, and turned her head slightly to look at the redness and swelling on her face. A man bit his lip and lowered his head. A look of nervousness appeared on his delicate face involuntarily. "Aman," Nan 11 said, "what's wrong with your face?" Aman knelt down with a plop, and his voice was a little panicked. "Yes, it's my fault, my slave is clumsy." Miss Ajin turned around and said with a smile, "Aman is rough and can't do any work well. I will send her to help in the kitchen later. Don't worry about her." "Who said I have to argue with her?" Nan 11 turned her eyes slightly and looked at Ajin expressionlessly. "When will it be your turn to assign tasks in Jinlan Garden?" Ajin's expression changed, and he knelt down, his tone slightly uneasy. "Miss, did this servant do something wrong?" "Miss, calm down, I will change my mind. I will serve you well in the future. You have done a lot of wrong things," Nan 11 said with a slightly cold tone. "Let's reflect on it here first." After that, without waiting for Ajin to say anything, his eyes fell back on Aman. "You get up first." Aman stood up uneasily. "There is only one master in Jinlan Garden, and that is me. Nan 11 said calmly, in this yard, there is only one person you need to obey, and that is me. Others have no right to boss you around. If you continue to fear, if you cower and let others bully you, I will send you away and sell you. A man's face turned pale and he bit his lip. Yes. Don't worry, the big girl is kind, so she won't give you away. Yunyu patted her shoulder, but you have to learn to be tougher in the future. Don't dare to resist when someone bullies you. If you don't resist, you'll keep being bullied. If you resist, she might not dare to do it in the future. People tend to bully the good and fear the evil, and bully the weak and fear the strong. The more you are afraid of her, the more she will think you are weak and easy to bully. A man glanced at Yunyu uneasily, feeling that she seemed to be defending herself, and then she couldn't help but glance at Ajin, who was still kneeling on the ground, pursed her lips and said nothing. Ajin is the maid given to Nan 11 by Gu Qingshu. She has always regarded herself as a first-class maid in Jinlanyuan and is superior to others in everything. The other maids know that her lady likes Gu Qingshu, so they have been tolerant to Ajin. This has caused she became increasingly domineering and arrogant. But Ajin used to be very good at being a good person, and he always acted very well behaved, smart, lively, and sweet-tongued every time in front of the young lady, so he liked Nan 11 very much. I was polite to you just for Gu Qingshu's sake, but that doesn't mean you can climb on top of me and dominate me. Nan 11 looked down at Ajin. I don't need you to serve me here. But you just slapped a man, so you should kneel here for 2 hours as a lesson. After kneeling, go back to your home, Mr. Gu, and don't appear in front of me again. At the end of the sentence, he actually pointed out where to go directly to her. Ajin's face changed drastically and he looked at Nan 11 in disbelief. Miss, I was sent here by the young master. So what's wrong with letting you go back? Nan 11 looked at her coldly. I don't need you here anymore. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 45. After saying this, she walked straight into the house. Yinyu and Yinshuang followed. A man looked at Ajin silently, and turned around and followed him in. The other two maids who came out of the house were the first-class maids in Jinlan Garden, Juxiang and Haitang. Nan 11 had always been not very particular about the pomp and circumstance. Originally, according to her mother's intention, she was going to prepare 4 maids for her, but she thought it was too much, so she kept Juxiang and Haitang. There were 4 second-class maids, A Man, A Chu, A Shui, and A Bing. However, after A Jing came, he directly treated A Man as a rough maid, because A Man was the weakest among the 4 people, and she didn't say a word when she was bullied. Of course, A Jin didn't have much kindness to others, and often relied on Gu Qingshu's relationship to talk to the maids around Nan 11, making the maids in Jinlan Garden dare not speak out. So when they saw Ajin being punished, Juxiang and Haitang were so happy that they secretly snorted that he deserved it, and then they shook their handkerchiefs and followed him into the house. Pour tea and water, massage back and legs. Juxiang and Haitang served Nan 11 diligently, and asked carefully while serving, I heard that the young lady and Gu Qingshu broke off their engagement. Nan 11 leaned on the pearwood chaise longue and squinted comfortably. What? Nothing. Juxiang just wanted to know if her young lady and Gu Qingshu really broke up. If so, should they set off firecrackers to celebrate? Although Gu Qingshu was outstanding in literary talent and good-looking, his style of behavior was like that of a gigolo. They didn't think he was reliable at all, and it was impossible for him to give their young lady happiness. Do you also think Gu Qingshu is unreliable? Nan 11 opened her eyes and said indifferently, I was blind before. Juxiang was slightly surprised and said quickly, in the eyes of the beholder, beauty is in the eyes of the person who likes him. Even if Gu Qingshu is not good, he is good in every way in the eyes of the person who likes him. This is not the lady's fault. Besides, Nan 11 knew Gu Qingshu when she was 12 years old. At that time, She was ignorant and only thought that he was so talented and knowledgeable, gentle and elegant. He looked like a scholar and gentleman that the ladies in the boudoir often said. It was normal to be moved. 4 years later, the feelings naturally became stronger and stronger. Gu Qingshu was also good at pretending and saying sweet words. Any woman would be moved, right? The reason why Juxiang and Haitang were not optimistic was probably more because they were standing from the perspective of an observer and looked at Gu Qingshu with a scrutinizing eye. At first, they felt that he was not worthy of the lady. Later, as time went on, they felt that he was not worthy of her. But these words cannot be said casually. The lady's heart is tied to him. Wouldn't it be gossiping if they said anything? Haitang pinched her ankle. Miss, why did you suddenly have a falling out with Gu Qingshu? I was blind before, but I have to wake up after 4 years. I can't be blind all my life, Nan 11 said, otherwise, I will be stupid to death. Juxiang blinked. Miss, don't say that to yourself. Otherwise, what should I say? Haitang still had some doubts. Miss, are you sure you want to break up with Mr. Gu? Is it just a temporary quarrel, or is there a misunderstanding? Fighting. Misunderstanding. Nan 11 closed her eyes, and the scene of thousands of arrows shooting appeared in her mind. The surrounding flames soared into the sky, corpses were everywhere, the whole palace was engulfed in a sea of fire, and those strong arms held her tightly in their arms until death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 46. If this is a misunderstanding, then this misunderstanding will probably never be resolved in this life. It's not a misunderstanding, she said lightly. Gu Qingshu and I are strangers in this life. If he doesn't come to me, then we will not interfere with each other. If he dares to come to me again, don't blame me for being cruel and ruthless. Juxiang and Haitang looked at each other. It sounds like the young lady is determined to draw a line with Gu Qingshu. That's great. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. It's better to draw a line. Gu Qingshu, a hypocrite with sweet words and sharp swords in his heart, is not worthy of the young lady's love. Her young lady deserves better. Nan 11 thought in her heart, don't interfere with each other? How is it possible? Gu Qingshu would never be willing to give up such a good marriage with the Nan family. He is still counting on his father-in-law to promote him, and he is still fantasizing about soaring in his official career, so he will definitely come to her again. Nan 11 is waiting for him to come. It was time for him to pay for what he did in his previous life. She woke up at the right time. Both her father and Gu Qingshu had served the new emperor well. Gu Qingshu was now the top scholar and his career had just begun. If there were no obstacles in the future, the emperor would definitely favor him. When he had achievements, he would slowly accumulate connections with the help of the prime minister and gain a firm foothold in the court. Nan 11 sneered and shook her head slowly. Starting today, Gu Qingshu would no longer have any achievements, and his fantasy of accumulating connections with the prime minister's mansion would eventually fall through. Want to gain a firm foothold in the court? It depends on whether Rong Yu allows it. Miss, have you had lunch at Madam's? Juxiang asked. Do you want to take a nap? Nan 11 came back to her senses, her eyes returned to calmness and calmness. Yins Huang, when does your prince usually return home? My lady, Yins Huang answered, standing by the door. My prince heard that you were going at noon, so he returned to the palace early to wait for you. What? Nan 11 was stunned and sat up suddenly. When did it happen? Yins Huang said, when you and Madam went out for a walk together. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, and asked calmly, I mean, how did you know? The secret guards of the palace exchange information. Exchange of information? Nan 11's expression was subtle. The exchange of information would not allow the secret guards of the palace to specifically inform Yin Huang of the whereabouts of the regent, right? Is it a taboo to disclose the whereabouts of the master without authorization? Then I won't sleep. Nan 11 got up and walked out, unable to understand Rong Yu's train of thought. I originally meant to go there at night, and didn't Yin Yu remind me? She said your prince would stay in the military camp during the day. I did say so. Yin Yu looked innocent, but no one expected that the prince was so well informed and actually returned home early to wait for the young lady. Nan 11 sighed. She felt that Rong Yu was really strange sometimes, not at all like the prince who was so frightening on the battlefield. Why don't you sleep for a while before going? Yin Yu advised, otherwise the prince will feel distressed and blame himself. What is he blaming himself for? He blames himself for not letting the young lady take a nap. Yin Yu said, maybe he will even implicate me and get punished. Nan 11 was silent for a moment. You worry too much, he won't punish you. She walked out of Jinlan Garden, followed by Yin Yu and Yin Shuang, and the three of them ignored a Jin who was still kneeling on the ground. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 47. The spring sun was shining brightly and the weather was warm. Nan 11 took a carriage back to the regent's palace where she had just left for half a day. Although a lot of things happened and she met a lot of people during this half day, time actually passed very quickly. It felt like she just went out for a walk and then returned home. Home. Standing outside the gate of the regent's palace, Nan 11 was stunned for a moment. When did she feel at home in the place where she had dreamed of escaping? It only takes a dream to go from deep love to hatred for a person, so does it also only take a dream to go from disgust to acceptance of a person? Nan 11 exhaled lightly and smiled faintly. What is there to think about? Life is originally a fate between people. A person's growth also requires hardships and gratitude, to see a person clearly, and to understand some people. Don't let yourself down, and don't let others down again. Stepping into the gate of the palace, the guards on both sides of the gate bowed slightly, and their attitude towards Nan 11 was as respectful as if they were treating the mistress. Nan 11 looked at them and realized belatedly that, in fact, from the first day she entered the palace, all the servants, maids, guards, including the housekeeper, had always been respectful to her and had never been offensive or rude. Even though she had been hostile to everyone in the regent's palace before, no one showed any dissatisfaction with her, and all this was obviously an order from the regent Rong Yu. Rong Yu was standing alone in the waterside pavilion of the palace at this time, silently looking at the sparkling lake, wearing a snow-white light robe, and his noble profile under the sunlight was like a god above the 9 heavens, unattainable, and people could only look up. His tall and steep body was as steady and calm as a mountain, showing a kind of strength and indifference at any time, automatically isolating everyone from approaching, so that people could only dare to watch from afar, kneel respectfully on the ground, and surrender in awe. Nan 11 stopped and admired the man's peerless grace. It was rare to see him in white clothes, as if he had taken off the iron-blooded murderous aura in the military camp, leaving only the nobility of a white crane in the sky and the holiness of an immortal exiled from the clouds. But at this moment, I don't know if it was Nan 11's illusion. She looked at the clean and noble back from afar, but she saw a little loneliness for no reason. At this moment, the man standing in front of the hall with his hands behind his back seemed to have noticed something, turned his head, and his cold eyes met Nan 11. When the four eyes met, the world seemed to be quiet in an instant. Nan 11 was amazed by his exquisite and handsome appearance, and the corners of her lips couldn't help but rise, and the smile reached her eyes. Rong Yu was slightly startled, and the next moment, his body swept to the front. Yin Yu said you went to the military camp. Nan 11 said in a gentle voice, why did you come back so soon? Rong Yu said in a faint voice, nothing happened in the military camp today. Nothing happened? Nan 11 accepted this reason and did not expose his slightly silly behavior of deliberately coming back to wait for her. She looked at him and said, I have never seen you wearing white before. Rong Yu was silent, then hummed, the prince just took a bath. Nan 11 sneered. What does taking a bath have to do with wearing white clothes? Did anyone stipulate that you must wear white clothes after taking a bath? Yin Yu and Yin Shuang, who stood silently behind Nan 11, lowered their eyes respectfully. Yin Yu could not help but complain in her heart. In fact, not only Nan 11 had never seen her prince wearing white clothes, but also she and Yin Shuang, the secret guards of the palace, had never seen it. The prince wore white clothes, could it be that he wore it on purpose for Miss Nan to see? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 48. Thinking of this, Yin Yu immediately said tactfully, Miss, you haven't taken your nap yet, why don't you go to the prince's bedroom and take a rest for a while? After this, Rong Yu and Nan 11 were silent. Seeing that she didn't speak, Rong Yu thought she didn't want to, and his eyes dimmed, you can go to the side hall to rest. Nan 11 keenly caught the flash of sadness in his eyes, raised the corner of her lips, and said casually, I slept in the prince's bedroom for more than a month. Why didn't the prince allow me to enter the bedroom just after leaving for half a day? Could it be that there is a beauty hidden in it? Miss Nan, this is a misunderstanding. Qing Yang raised his hand and guaranteed, defending his prince, except for you, no other woman has entered the prince's bedroom in all these years. I can guarantee it with my head. Rong Yu pursed his lips, his handsome face slightly tensed, there is no beauty. Qing Yang, if I really want your head, you have to move your head now. Nan 11 stretched out her hand and took Rong Yu's slender hand, and said to Qing Yang jokingly, has your prince's bedroom never had a maid enter it? Ah! Maid. Qing Yang was stunned, does that count? Aren't maids women? Qing Yang choked and was speechless. Okay, he expressed it wrong. He should have said that except Miss Nangzi and the maids in the palace, no other women had entered the prince's bedroom. No beauty. Nangzi's eyes fell on Ranjia's face, I'm not a beauty. Qing Yang. Miss Nangzi really took the wrong medicine again. She even confronted the prince. Ranjia's eyes fell on her beautiful face, and a trace of softness appeared in his eyes, you are more beautiful than them. Qing Yang looked up at the sky. His master can actually say sweet words. The sun really rose from the west. Nangzi quieted down and felt a little hot in her ears for some reason. Perhaps she had never thought that a simple sentence could be so powerful, as if all the sounds around her suddenly disappeared, and only that sentence kept echoing in her ears, making people blush and heartbeat. You are more beautiful than them. Tisk. Who said the regent was indifferent and taciturn? The coaxing words came out so naturally that it didn't feel out of place at all. Nan 11 faced Qin Jiang's seemingly calm but increasingly gossipy eyes, feeling as if she was being teased in public, and took Rong Yu's hand and walked towards the bedroom. I have something to tell you. Qing Yang followed, and Yunyu and Yin Huang followed too. Walking outside the bedroom, Nan 11 turned around and looked at the three of them. I have something important to discuss with the prince, you stay outside and don't let anyone in to disturb you. Qing Yang nodded quickly, Miss, are you going to talk about marriage? Nan 11 was silent for a moment, and glanced at him strangely, what marriage? Marriage with the prince. Qing Yang looked at her as if he was looking at a heartless woman. Miss Nan, you don't want to go back on your word, didn't you say it yourself? I did say that. Nan 11's mouth twitched slightly, thinking that Qing Yang had the same hobby as gossiping, but today we are going to talk about something else, don't be in a hurry, okay? Qing Yang was silent, then said oh, and stopped talking obediently. Nan 11 glanced at him and went into Zhaochen Hall with Rong Yu. If you don't like it, don't let them in the future. Rong Yu suddenly spoke in a low voice, you can make the decision on all matters in the palace. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, Tabula below article thumbnail -300 x 250, placement, below article thumbnail -300 x 250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 49. Nan 11 was quiet for a moment, then turned to look at him. I'm not the mistress of the palace, how can I take charge of things in the palace? Rongyu pursed her thin lips slightly and looked at her without saying a word, her dark pupils showing no emotion. Seeing him like this, Nan 11 couldn't help but curl her lips and smile. Your Majesty, lower your head a little. Rongyu's heart moved slightly. Thinking of her behavior in the morning, his eyes darkened and he lowered his head cooperatively. Nan 11 stood on tiptoes and kissed his lips. The girl's fragrance lingers on the nose, and penetrates into the heart and spleen, making people addicted. Rongyu resisted the urge to hold her in his arms. When the soft touch on his lips left, he looked at her quietly. What does this mean? The voice was depressed, revealing some complex and deep emotions. What's the meaning? What if I say that I want to knock down the prince? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows and smiled with a hint of slyness. Will the prince punish me? Rongyu was silent for a moment and said in a light voice, no. After a pause, he added, I allow you to throw him down at any time. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, meeting his burning gaze. She felt her cheeks heat up slightly for no reason. After coughing lightly, she got down to business. There is something I want to tell the prince. Very urgent. Nan 11 shook her head. There's no rush. If there's no rush, let's wait until after nap, Rongyu said, picking her up and walking towards the inner hall. Are you going back tonight? It doesn't matter whether you want to go back at night. Nan 11 leaned on the bedside and patted the place next to her. Your Majesty, lie here and let's talk together. Rongyu stood still. For more than a month, Nan 11 resisted, resented, and hated him. Every time she saw him, she wanted to kill him with her eyes, and physical contact was even more impossible. It was the first time that I actively invited him to lie next to me. Rongyu looked at the vivid and bright face of the girl in front of him, and had an unreal feeling in a trance. Will the prince go to court tomorrow? Rongyu came back to his senses, slowly sat down on the edge of the bed, and leaned against the head of the bed. What's wrong? Nan 11 said, the emperor has been on the throne for more than a year, but the prince still holds the power of regent. I'm afraid the emperor will be tossing and turning when he goes to bed at night. Rongyu was silent for a moment. There was no emotion on his face, and his voice was so light that he could not tell whether he was happy or angry. Do you want me to take the initiative to hand over the power of regent? No. Nan 11 shook her head, on the contrary. Rongyu looked at her without saying a word. I hope that the prince can firmly hold the power in his hands. Nan 11 raised her eyes slightly and looked at the carved beams and painted buildings in the bedroom. I hope that the emperor will never be able to touch a hair of the prince in his lifetime. Why? Nan 11 turned to look at him. The emperor is very suspicious of the prince. Once the prince hands over the power, he will be left to his own devices in the future, and his power will be reduced step by step. He will even put the prince to death on an unfounded charge. Is your lord willing to do this? Rongyu's tone was cold. He can't control me. If the prince has no weaknesses, then indeed, even the current emperor cannot do anything to him. Nan 11 said, but is the prince sure that he has no weaknesses? Rongyu said nothing. Nan 11 turned around, a pair of clear and beautiful eyes locked on his handsome and evil face. Am I the prince's weakness? Rongyu pursed her thin lips slightly and looked at her without saying a word. After a long time, she said lightly, yes. No. Nan 11 shook her head. As long as the prince holds the power, I will be his support, not his weakness. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 50. I will never be the prince's weakness again in this life, Nan 11 said solemnly. If one day, I really become a bargaining chip for others to coerce the prince, then I would rather end my life than let the prince dash. No, Rong Yu's face changed slightly, and his dark pupils rolled gloomily. This king does not allow you to mess around. Nan 11 raised his eyes and smiled lightly. I mean if dash. No, if Rong Yu's tone was tense, this king will not let this happen. Nan 11 was silent for a moment, slowly leaned towards his arms, and hummed imperceptibly, the prince is right, this situation will never happen. Where are there so many ifs? Isn't it to seek justice for those enemies in the previous life to live again? Rong Yu has military power in his hands, and he is such a strong person. In addition, she has the memory of her previous life. They have too many advantages. If she can be calculated again like this, what is the point of her living? Nan 11 calmed down, but doubts emerged in her heart again. Rong Yu's attitude towards her always felt a little unusual. It didn't seem like pure love, and it didn't even look like a normal reaction when a man likes a woman. Nan 11's mind turned slightly, and she hesitated and said, does the prince really like me? This question was asked once in the morning, and Nan 11 was sure that Rong Yu did like her when she was dying in her previous life. But now she felt that she needed to confirm it again. Rong Yu's black eyes locked on her, and there seemed to be unfathomable feelings hidden in his eyes. Yeah. When did you like me? Nan 11 seemed curious. Why did the prince like me? A long time ago, Rong Yu said. Like is like, there is no reason. A long time ago? How long is a long time? Nan 11 felt strange in her heart. She was only 16 years old this year. How long ago was a long time ago? 3 years, 5 years. Rong Yu couldn't have liked her when she was 10 years old. Moreover, after he led the army at the age of 16, he was often on the battlefield in those years. Nan 11 first met the regent Rong Yu on the day when his army returned triumphantly. The young man sitting on a tall horse like a god exuded nobleness and a strong iron-blooded aura. Noble and ruthless and iron-blooded killing seemed to be two completely different characteristics, but she saw the perfect fusion of these two characteristics in the young man. If there was no forced imprisonment later, Nan 11 actually worshipped Rong Yu in her heart and thought he was the patron saint of the great Zhou. However, she didn't see him many times. At that time, she was still young, and he was a noble prince. How could ordinary people see him easily? So Nan 11 really couldn't figure out when Rong Yu fell in love with her? Your Majesty, Qin Jiang's clear voice sounded outside the palace, interrupting Nan 11's thoughts. Princess Bailing sent a letter to invite Your Majesty to attend her birthday banquet tomorrow. Nan 11 raised her eyes. Princess Bailing actually sent the letter to the regent's mansion? What was she thinking? Rong Yu has never been a person who likes crowds. When has he ever attended a banquet hosted by others? Do you want to go? Rong Yu looked at Nan 11, it's good to go and join in the fun. Nan 11 thought about it. Princess Bailing Lin Miaoan was a domineering girl. Although she was a little spoiled, she didn't have bad intentions. And her fate in her previous life didn't seem to be very good. Because her father Lin Jun and the eldest princess had a bad relationship.